Hey there, are there questions you'd really like to ask, but it's just easier to say, asking for a friend? Well, today I'm going to talk with the host of the podcast, Asking for a Friend, Michele Folan, and she's going to talk about how important it is to tell people what you're going to do, to say it out loud, to set the fear aside, to ask those questions, whether it's your provider, your coach, or your family member. And to make sure we're taking care of ourselves first, because we're living longer than ever. I know you're going to enjoy this episode. Welcome to Hill Talk's Midlife podcast for your body, mind, spirit, and business. As an occupational therapist turned entrepreneur, I have done a lot of learning, and my hope is to share these incredible people that I've met along the way with you so that we can laugh, learn, and grow together. I am your host, Hillary Baggett of Community Bloom and the Women's Midlife Network, and I'm truly glad you're here. Before you start listening to this particular episode, I want you to know that Michele and I are going to have to do a follow-up because after we stopped recording, the conversation got even richer. So I know that you're going to enjoy the fusion of this conversation. We talk a little bit about caring for our bodies, for our minds, and for our spirits, and even our business. So enjoy. Today, I'm excited to welcome Michele Folan. She's a 26-year veteran of the health industry. She's a sales leader, a coach, a self-professed lifelong learner. Oh, I love her already. And the host of Asking for a Friend podcast. You know, I can't wait to get into this conversation. But in her podcast, she likes to address topics important to women in midlife and beyond. Hey, more things in common. So Michele is also the director of field inside sales for Astro Pak Corporation that's based out of California. And welcome, Michele. So glad you're here.
Hillary, thanks for having me. This is wonderful. I'm excited to be here with you.
Well, I think we could talk forever, but let's just go ahead and dig in. Tell me about your career and what you're doing today.
Right now, I am the director of inside sales for a company that does high purity cleaning and passivation. I manage a team that is remote all over the country. So the nice thing about it is I can live in Cincinnati and manage a team that are kind of spread out all over the place.
All right. I can't wait to understand the pivot, because how do you go from your full-time job to making this creative pivot during the pandemic to start a podcast? Can you tell me about that?
Well, I hope you're sitting because it's a long story. I'll give you kind of the Reader's Digest version. I had been in the health industry for many, many years, made a pivot back in like 2011 or so, and worked for that company for, I don't know, a good 4, almost 5 years. And then there was an acquisition restructuring and my job was eliminated. So first time I'd ever lost a job per se. The interesting thing was, I was in my mid 50s at the time, and 6 weeks later, COVID hit. Yeah. And so I was in a full-on job search during a global pandemic. It's challenges, right?
That's hard.
But what's interesting about that time, even though, it was really sucky for everyone, that time was, in a way, kind of serendipitous that it happened when it did, because it really did give me some time to think about what I really wanted to do, what was really important to me. And I know I could have gone back and gotten a position in my previous industry, but it didn't feel right. And maybe had I been 20 or 30 years old, I would have done just that. But at my age, I thought, you know what? I need to really think about this and be intentional.
Yes, intention is everything.
It really is. And, the job market was really terrible during that time. There weren't a lot of people hiring. So I really used that time to be introspective, focus on my health, exercise a lot. And I think at one point, I just decided I'm handing this over to God. And I just need to go with the flow here, because I felt that if I was trying to force something, I was going to end up, kind of going from the fat to the frying pan. So as things would have it, I also started thinking about, would I be truly happy just working? Was there something else missing? It just, just how you think, what am I really passionate about? And it was during the pandemic when I started listening to podcasts. I had never, you too, huh?
Me too. Yeah, for
I
sure.
had never listened to a podcast before.
Me neither.
Never had time. I was working, traveling 2-3 days a week. And I thought, this is really interesting. And there was one podcast in particular that I listened to, and I actually have had her on my podcast. And I thought, with my background in the health industry and my love of talking to people, why couldn't I do this? And
exactly.
So I formulated my plan, but then I got a job. So I'm like, well, probably not a great time to be starting a podcast when you have a brand new job. The optics on that would be very poor. And so the job that I got, it was just, how when you're in an interview or you're talking to someone and you just have that immediate connection.
Yes.
And you feel this vibe about the company. And then everyone I interviewed with 4 or 5 people throughout the interviewing process. Every single person, I'm like, what a great person. What a nice company this is. And it took almost 11 months, but it was so worth it. I found a position. So
okay. It wasn't that their interview and hiring process took that long, but your search process.
Yeah. And that was okay, right? Because I landed in a great place. Then I, really wanted to give this job 110%. And then as I got more comfortable with the position, that yearning to do the podcasts bubbled back up. And I told some people that I was going to do it. And I had to do it.
I like it very much. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. I just told someone today, because I'm about to take a spiritual sabbatical for 10 weeks. And they said, oh, what are you doing during that time? I said, well, I don't know for sure, but I'm going to submit those first 3 chapters of a book to publish because I've been sitting on them for years. So I love when we say it out loud. We are so much closer to making it happen. I love it.
Yeah. And it's also, there's some other things involved here, Hillary, as well, is that we have to put that fear of failure aside. And when you say you're going to write a book, there's all kinds of emotion that comes with that, because you're putting yourself out there to be reviewed and criticized by other people. And I think as midlife women, taking a step back and saying, who am I doing this for? I'm doing this for me, right? And then what I hope is that somebody else, one other person, maybe 10 other people will find some joy in it or benefit from it. And I think that's the perspective we have to take when we take risks and put ourselves out there.
Well, absolutely. And because I've had this particular book on my heart for so long, one of the things that freed me up was it might not be the only book I ever write. And you know what? There's a lot more than just writing the book. It's getting it published and getting it marketed and sold. It's a huge process. It's like giving birth, all over again. And so realizing that the people that we are serving, they need us. They're waiting for us. They're waiting for the podcast to hear that message that they can do this. They're waiting to know that other people are afraid and we're moving forward anyway. So when did you start your podcast?
Almost a year ago. And I just did a Instagram reel. I haven't put it out yet, but it's about, oh my gosh, it's been a year. And what I started out to do was it was a creative pivot for me. It was like a creative outlet. But what I have found, Hillary, is that I'm interviewing these women and men too, but mostly women. I'm interviewing these women who are doing amazing things. They're in their 50s and 60s, and they're going on a diet pilgrimage, basically, and getting themselves in shape. They're writing books. They're starting coaching businesses. They are amazing and inspiring. And I am so fortunate that I'm getting to meet these people. And then the other side of that is the health and wellness focus that is near and dear to my heart. And, I call it asking for a friend, because if I have a guest expert that's coming, say it's an OBGYN that specializes in hormones, I'll ask people, hey, what questions would you have for this expert? And I was pleasantly surprised that people will ask questions and, put themselves out there, because I often think that women are hesitant to have these conversations with their own doctor because they don't know what to ask.
Absolutely. I have an episode coming up on that where I interviewed my own surgeon, and I said, okay, doc, what do you want women to know to ask? So I love that you are giving people the opportunity kind of for that anonymous submission. And that's so key, because you can't just rely on asking your girlfriend or a sister, or if you do still have a parent around. So we need to be able to advocate for ourselves. But if we don't know what questions to ask, it makes it really, really difficult, for sure.
There's the other aspect too of this, I'll call it invisible woman syndrome. And that starts to creep in midlife as well, because we are trying to define who we are. We were defined as mothers, caretakers, chef, housewife, whatever it is. And then as we go through these life transitions, what is our passion in life? What is it that gets us out of bed in the morning? And that's another big topic in the podcast. And I think you cover that too. I mean,
we do. I talk a lot about identity and taking that time for a reset and reflection. Absolutely. So I love that we're both concerned about the health and the wellness of the woman in their body, in their mind, and in their spirit, which I think for me, it just makes it fascinating of how that body, mind, spirit impacts our business, and whether it's a paid position, a volunteer position, a podcast. If we don't have those foundational components of health, what does that do? Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is, being a stay-home mom, being a housewife is a hard job. And when that woman says, I want to go out and do something, I never want a woman to minimize that experience, because that is valuable experience. Those are people I want to hire, because I know they're organized. They can get it done. I mean, they, you know what I mean? And so they should be proud of their history and what they've done.
Absolutely. And I think there's that value in saying it out loud. If you're a woman and you're over 40, over 50, over 60, and you say, I want to do this, I can tell you it's possible. And you might need someone or a tribe of women to come alongside you and say, hey, this is how I did it. I want more women's voices to be elevated. I want more women to know that they can do whatever their dream is.
Yeah.
Write a book, start a podcast, become a whole new career. It's work. There's not a shortcut to it, but it's possible.
It's never too late.
Well, that brings me to the next question. What your platform, Asking for a Friend, what's your main goal for midlife women outside of the health and wellness that you were just talking about?
Oh, I really just want women to value this time of life. Midlife is a great time of life. And we deal with menopause and, hormone fluctuations and no hormones and all of that, the health stuff. But we are in control. We have to ask the questions. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to put ourselves first. My favorite saying of all time is you got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can show up for others. And we're living longer than we ever have. And we could be around for another 30 years. What do you want those 30 years to look like?
Yeah, we could be around for 30 to 50 years. Really. And
yeah, who knows, right?
I think it's such a key message because we are at a very exciting time where people are talking about mental health. They are talking about self-care. We are talking about we are going to live longer. How do we want to feel and think and live? And what changes do we need to tweak in our diet, in our exercise, in our choices?
Right. And, I want to be able to get up off the floor, which I know sounds like something small, but I cannot tell you, and my own mother included, that had that, unfortunate fall, didn't hurt anything, didn't break anything, but truly could not get back up.
Absolutely.
And that is something that can be preventable if we start acting now. And that's what I want to get across to my listeners.
Fantastic. Because getting up off the floor is not to be minimized. I'm an occupational therapist professionally. So helping people get off the floor is something that we train. And I've even run across strangers while driving across Kansas. And this woman could not get up off the floor. And so I asked her daughter, would you like me to help you? Just knowing that a lot of people are going to be afraid of that. But we got her off the floor, but there were some serious concerns that were outside of that. But
yeah.
I love that you are a voice for women that you can do this. Is there anything else you want to share about who mentored you through your journey through midlife?
Well, that's kind of interesting because I was not one to reach out for help in the past because I always thought I had all the answers. I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, and it's that I think I want people to have this feeling that I'm successful and that I'm, competent and all those things. But it wasn't until I decided I was going to do the podcast, and I was unemployed at the time. And I did reach out to women who were very knowledgeable in their different fields to get their input on doing the podcast. And some of that was just a vote of confidence, right? That, hey, I'm doing the right thing. Yes, yes, you can do this. You'll be successful, but also to get their input and advice. And that felt really good. I'm like, I like this networking stuff. And I did more of that in my process of looking for a job as well. So now that's opened up the door to me where I want to network with other women. I want to have connections with new women that are new to my life. And so a lot of great things came out of that.
Fantastic. I'm all about connection. And I think sometimes some people think of networking as a dirty word or well, you're just trying to get me to promote you. And I'm like, no. I'm talking about like connecting and genuinely meeting people that you want to connect with and want to refer because you've had a positive experience with them or you really know the results that they get. So I am thrilled that it's not a dirty word for you.
No. And here's the other thing too, Hillary. You have a podcast for midlife women. I have a podcast for midlife women. And we're not the only ones, right? There's plenty out there. There is room at the table for everyone. And I want to be supportive of other women, no matter who they are. And I don't look at them as competition. I try to learn from them and try to make myself better.
Well, absolutely, because there's more than one coffee shop in every town. There's more than one pizza place, more than one ice cream shop, and the more places we make for women at the table, then the more women we reach. There's hundreds of millions of women in the world. So there's a lot of work to be done. So yeah. I'm glad that we can come together for that.
Agreed.
Well, I had some really fun questions to ask you. And let's see. What is your favorite word?
I like the word yes. Because I don't like it when anyone tells me no.
Wow. Now, how do you do, though, saying no to others so you say yes to yourself?
I don't like saying no to other people either.
Oh, okay.
But I'm getting better at it. Okay. So that's the whole setting boundaries piece that I think we all have had to learn as we've gotten older.
That's right. I'm kind of hoping that elementary schools start teaching boundaries and healthy thinking, because wouldn't that save us a lot of work instead of waiting until we're 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s to start young? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Really good. So what is your least favorite word then, Michele?
I think can't, because I think even as we get to where we are in life, to say I can't do something feels so limiting to me. And I don't like it when my children say can't. And, oh, I can't, Mom, I can't do that. I'm like, what do you mean you can't? So, but it goes for us adults too.
Yeah. There might be another way to say that, if not right now, or that might not be the best choice for me right now.
Right.
Or I can't imagine how that's going to turn out. Could you help me? I think there are a lot of other ways.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Oh, good. Well, I think this has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm so grateful. So, Michele, how can people find you?
Well, they can find me at askingforafriend_pod on Instagram, or Asking for a Friend Pod on Facebook. And then the podcast is available on all the platforms. So anywhere you would find your podcast, you can find Asking for a Friend. There are a few other podcasts with the same name, but if you just look for my picture, you will find it. And then you can also find me on Buzzsprout. So it's askingforafriend.buzzsprout.com.
Awesome. So I think my big takeaways from today are: tell people that you're going to do it. Name it, claim it, say it out loud. Put the fear of failure aside, because you're just going to go for it and you're going to be helping other people. And ask the question so that we can take care of ourselves, or make sure we're taking care of ourselves and make sure we're asking the questions.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, Michele, I'm so glad to meet you. And I feel like I'm asking for a friend just talking to you. So thanks so much for joining us at Hill Talks.
Thank you, Hillary. It's wonderful to see you.
Hey, are you over 40, over 50, a Gen X, or a midlife? What is it that you are looking for in your next chapter of life? What's your great purpose? What sparks joy or puts a smile on your face? Let's keep it simple, right? So I'm curious, if you had a burning passion or felt like you were put on this mission, what would it look like for you? Well, not everybody has that clarity. Sometimes it's helpful to come together and brainstorm it. Sometimes it's helpful to just meet someone else who's maybe just one step ahead of you. Maybe you can borrow the courage that it seems like others have. Well, that's the inspiration behind creating this Women's Midlife Network. I just want women to know that they can do that next hard thing, whether it's starting a podcast, whether it's writing a workshop, giving an interview, whether it's learning some new technology. These are the things that can overwhelm us for sure. Let's move forward together because your time has come. Know that for sure. This is Hillary Baggett with Hill Talks Podcast. Listen in and know you are not alone. And Community Bloom, the Women's Midlife Network. Music is March of the Dragonfly by Belmont Club. And as always, we hope you hear the love. Until next time.